Hello and welcome to the Unstoppable Joy podcast. I'm your host, Catherine Curry, and today we're going to talk about Christmas wishes, St. Nicholas, and when you have a less than perfect Christmas. So pull up a chair, grab your favorite beverage, and let's get started. Have you ever wished for something, wished on a star, and really thought that maybe it might come true? What about Santa? As a kid, did you write a letter to Santa and ask him for something special? Are you like Ralphie from A Christmas Story and just thinking that you just need this one thing and then your life will be perfect? I did some research on Saint Nicholas, which is who we get our idea of Santa from. And did you know he was an actual guy? He was born in 270 AD. He March the 15th, and his parents were pretty wealthy. He was a Christian bishop of Greek descent, and he lived in Asia Minor, which is actually the southern border of Turkey. And his parents died and left him quite a big sum of money. And he was known for being very generous and giving gifts secretly. That's where we get the idea of giving and Santa coming and him doing it in secret. Apparently, there's a story about him helping a poor man who has 3 daughters. And in those days, if you didn't have a dowry, you couldn't get married. And so these girls were going to be sold into slavery, possibly prostitution. And so the story goes that he threw a bag of coins up through the window, and that was the money for the dowry for the girls on, I guess, 3 separate occasions. So that's where we get the idea of the secret giving. So they're secret Santa. St. Nicholas was also known as Nicholas of Bari and Nicholas the Wonder Worker. Today we don't really think about the miracles that are attributed to St. Nicholas, but there's many stories that you can find online and in the church history talking about the things that St. Nicholas the things that were attributed to him as far as saving children and helping sailors be safe and praying for calm waters, that sort of thing. One Christmas season, shortly after the kids and I had moved to Holland, Michigan, we had in one day lost our home, our dog, our cat, and the kid's dad. He had been involved in drugs and had become abusive, and it came to a head, and we had to flee for our safety. And so that had happened earlier in the fall time, and this was the first Christmas that we had been without our dad. And the kids were having a hard time adjusting. Who wouldn't after losing everything and basically becoming homeless? And my sister graciously and her husband graciously offered to let us live with them. And so we moved several hours away from our home to live with them in the little town of Holland, Michigan. That town is so different now than it was at that time. It's just booming and it's pretty crazy. But Holland, Michigan, it is a gorgeous town. The little downtown area, it's not little anymore, but they have all the old storefronts and they've just been so beautifully maintained and they've added on to them. And this particular evening when we went down to see Santa Claus, and it was snowy and cold and the roads were slippery, but I had promised the kids that they could go down and talk to Santa. He was going to be at their favorite store downtown, one of them. They had such cute little stores down there. They had a sandcastle toy store, which the kids loved, and they had, of course, the peanut shop, which is the candy store, and then they had Treehouse Books, and it was just a neat bookstore. They had a back area that had animals in it. They had, I think, a chinchilla and rabbit and some birds, and they had a little platform and little area that looked like a tree house where the kids could go and read some books and explore, and Santa was going to be there at the Treehouse Books. And so, of course, we had to go to the Treehouse Books. I took my kids and my niece along with us to visit with Santa. And I sat back to give my kids a little bit of room to have their moment with Santa. And they had all been very excited, still with that magical sense of Santa and him coming to give them a gift. And each of them had their time with Santa, and then we headed out to trudge our way through the snow and get back home safely. Later that evening, as I was tucking my kids into bed, my sister called me away, and I went to talk with her. Apparently, my niece had overheard my oldest son had asked Santa for a new daddy. Wow. In his little heart, he knew that something was missing. He knew that something was wrong and that he was longing for a new daddy. The boys had known what was happening with their dad. Unfortunately, they had found his drug paraphernalia, and they actually had confronted him, as little as they were. Their dad had a drug problem when they were just infants and had gone to rehab and had come out of his rehab program and was healthy, and he had been working and doing well for 4 or 5 years. And then when we moved back to Michigan from Alabama, we had gone down to Alabama for his rehab, he ended up getting back into drugs again, and the boys were very aware of the conflict in our home, and there was a lot of arguing going on, and it was not a good place. And eventually, like I said, we fled for our safety, and so here's little Keenan asking Santa for a new daddy. And how often do we just ask the universe, wish on a star, make something better, change what's going on here? We have this sense that things just aren't right in our world, that things just aren't as they should be. In my son's heart, he knew that something was not right. He was longing for that sense of a united household, a mom and a dad, and that everything would be put back together if just Santa could give us a new daddy. I had prayed and prayed for years that my husband would be well, that he would be healthy, that he would give up his drugs and be set free. And it didn't happen. And I didn't know how to process that. If God is God, then why couldn't he do this? If he was a good God, if he was all-powerful. And as I found out about Keenan asking Santa for a new daddy, my heart just broke, because I too was longing for that. I wished that there was some easy way out of our situation, that a new daddy would swoop in and take care of us and provide for us and be that role model for my kids, be that support for me, and make everything better. But that didn't happen. And for a long time, I have been single, and I have been managing my kids on my own. Throughout the years, there have been men that have come alongside to help me, but I've remained single this whole time. It's not until recently that I've gotten engaged to an incredible man, and I'm super excited for that. But my kids are all grown now, and his role as a dad isn't the same as it would have been when they were little. And that's one thing that I've always prayed for my kids, that they would have a father figure, that they would have a dad. And I've struggled with that over the years. Why didn't God provide that? Why didn't he move and make a way there. And I was praying one day and thinking about this and just coming to realize that sometimes God doesn't allow us to have everything that we could need here on earth. Sometimes He allows us to let Him make up the difference. And I have prayed over my children that they would have a sense of their Heavenly Father, that He would make up the difference. Even me as a mom, there's no way I can do everything and be everything for my kids. I just can't. I'm humanly incapable of being everything to them. And so I have to pray, even as a mom to them, that the areas that I mess up, the areas that I am not perfect and I am not all that they need, that God would make up that difference. And I believe that He is able to. Ultimately, I've had to entrust my kids to the Lord, knowing that I can't be everything for them, and that the circumstances as they were, they didn't have a dad in the home. And so I had to entrust their hearts back to God and realize that they were basically given to me from God, and they were really His in the first place. And I remember several times praying and saying, God, these are your kids. Take care of them. It has been my privilege to watch God moving in each of their lives, showing them His goodness and His mercy and His kindness. There's a verse in Ecclesiastes that says, He has made everything beautiful in its time. He also has planted eternity in the hearts and minds of men. In the Amplified, it says that He has divinely implanted a sense of purpose working through the ages, which nothing under the sun but God alone can satisfy. And as Kenan was longing for that daddy to have those things put back into place that were broken, he was ultimately crying out for his Heavenly Father. This verse again says that God has implanted a sense of purpose working through the ages, which nothing under the sun but God alone can satisfy. There's a place in each of our hearts that nothing but God alone can satisfy. As you look at your Christmas this year, and you may be feeling that sense of missing something, just missing out, things just not being right, know that maybe it's God's nudging, saying, what you truly need is me. What you truly need isn't things or situations put back or certain people in your life. What you truly need, what your heart's truest longing for, can only be met by a relationship with God. Reach out to Him today. Sense His presence, sense His love. It is my sincere prayer that this holiday season, this Christmas, this New Year's, that you would find the joy of knowing Christ, that you would sense His presence, that you would sense His love, His joy, and His comfort, that you will allow Him to make up the difference where you are lacking this Christmas. Be blessed. If you enjoyed today's podcast, please subscribe and share this podcast with your friends. The more that we get the word out, the more we can spread that joy and make a difference in our world. Thanks for joining in. Today's episode was sponsored by Solar Grids Grand Rapids. If you are looking for solar grids to be placed on your home or business to save yourself some money, you can find information about that at solargridsgrandrapids.com. They service the greater Grand Rapids area and the entire U.S., so go ahead, reach out to them today.